This is Power Athlete Radio. With your hosts, Denny K, Professor Booty, and the Luke Summers. And now, toes forward, hips locked, shoulders set, and retract those scapulars. It's time for some knowledge bombs.
What's up, Power Athlete Nation? Welcome to episode 76 of Power Athlete Radio. I'm Denny. I'm here with John, Luke, Tex, Callie, and Playtech. We're ready to rock and roll. How you guys doing over there?
Doing well, thanks.
What is Denny? You seem so
preoccupied.
No, ecstatic today. He just seems like he's really excited to be here.
A lot of coffee, man.
I'm being facetious, bro. Yeah. You don't seem that happy.
How could I not be happy? I'm doing what I love.
That's a word of a liar.
Doing what I love and loving what I do.
There you go. There you go. So we have to tell our listeners, Morrow, we got to reschedule Morrow. He's a busy man. I know we hyped him up that he was going to be on today's show, but we'll have him next week.
Yeah, it was last minute last night you shot out that email, right, Denny?
Yeah.
Well, let's just talk a little bit about, for those people that obviously are going to click on this deal and expect to hear Mauro De Pasquale. I'll just give you a little history on Mauro, and hopefully we can preempt and get him on here next week or in the coming weeks. Mauro is not only an accomplished powerlifter, but a doctor out of Canada, and I was fortunate to meet Dr. De Pasquale in 1999. My agent, Ed Cunningham, was friends with Mauro, and Mauro ended up setting me up with my first supplement deal and sent me boxes of supplements to try out. And he had a book attached, a hardcover book. He gave me the anabolic diet and the metabolic diet. So after I went through and looked at all these supplements and had no idea what to do, I opened up the book and started going through. And he had a huge deal on supplements, but also had this, his diet stuff for the anabolic diet, which was a secular low carb, kind of a ketogenic diet with a refeed, and it was really the first exposure I had ever had to carb cycling. And I called him up, and he said, here's the deal. I want you to do this. It's great for body composition and strength, but in terms of football-based glycolytic performance, there's going to be a decrease. But what I think you ought to do is, it's the off season. Let's try this diet, and then we'll make adjustments along the way, and we'll kind of tailor it. And that became really the initial groundwork for not only the way I followed diet and a lot of the things I did for the next, what are we in 2015, almost for the next 15 some years. So really what you guys see from the Power Athlete diet and what I've done in terms of recommendations really started at that, initial reading and consult and a lot of the stuff that I did with Mauro. And then, as I all of a sudden put on muscle, got size, started changing body composition, I started fine tweaking the diet and really realizing that, the majority of your calories should really come from that, proteins and fats, and then carbs, and it's great. I mean, I see it all over the internet. People, constantly hashtag earn your carbs. And that whole idea of earning your carbs and using carbs as fuel and starting to understand the power of it really doesn't take hold on people until they go to a kind of a ketogenic diet where you're for 12 days you eat a keto diet, and then all of a sudden you hit that first carb refeed on let's say on a Saturday morning you sit down and eat a bunch of pancakes, and all of a sudden you're sitting there and sweat is dripping off of you and your heart's racing and you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, what's going on here? And it's just one of those mere facts that you starve yourself and you get into a ketogenic state, you dump the carbs back in, all of a sudden there's a huge hormonal shift, and that was really my first deal. But then as I started to train and started looking for more performance, that's how I started adjusting the diet. So it'd be great, hopefully next week we can get Mauro on. He's a wealth of knowledge, and it's really the first guy that I remember who was really big into the carb cycling, and really I think the father of a lot of what you see with a lot of this kind of macro manipulation stuff.
Now you were talking about sweating on your pancakes. Is this like a personal? It was pretty vivid. It seemed like is this something that happened this weekend?
It happens all the time. So since we contacted Mauro, I just about the time I hit up Mauro to get on the podcast, one of my, we talked about our pro bono client Huey, and Huey is on a ketogenic diet. Huey's needs some weight to lose, and he's got a couple other issues that we need to work through, and so we decided that a ketogenic approach would probably be the best one for him, instead of allowing him to kind of, I'm going to eat this and eat this. Just be like, no, this is what you're going to eat. We're going to put you on a ketogenic diet until we can lose the weight, and then we'll slowly start adding things back in once we fix a little bit of the metabolic derangement. And his big thing to me was, I don't think I can do this by myself. And I was like, all right, no problem. I'll do it with you. So probably about 3 months ago, I started doing kind of jumped on the keto with him for about 12 or 14 days. And then I kind of went to an anabolic approach where I do a carb refeed. And literally on Saturday morning, I'll get up and I'll make my girls like gluten-free pancakes, and I'll be sitting there. And as I'm like making them, everything's fine. All of a sudden, I sit down and put some syrup on them, and the girls start eating the pancakes. I take like 2 bites, and all of a sudden, my wife is like, "What is wrong with you? Why are you sweating so bad?" I'm like, "I can't stop sweating." And then, like, seriously, like 17 pancakes later, I'm still hungry. So it's definitely an interesting shift. But in terms of performance and just being able to really like ramp up intensity for your workout, it is a terrible fucking thing to be on a low-carb diet for doing this stuff. Like, we did the lactic acid threshold test this morning on the Aerodynes, and I'm not kidding you, like, right around, like, the 3rd round, or the 3rd set, I started getting, like, metal mouth and, like, lactic acid's pooling and walking around. Poor Luke's over there, like, faking injuries, trying to get a shoelace in there.
Yeah, so I untied my shoelace on the 3rd round and managed to get it tangled in the pedal just so John could win. That's the price you got to pay to be John's training partner. You win, wow. All of a sudden you're in the silent treatment. He gets all moody.
Luke and I time all of our lifts. So like we'll time our lifts, and like then we compete in all of our lifts. Now it's like you can't lift that in points. My best is 0.77. And then I came out, and I think on the last set, and I got him on the last one. So we were pulling deadlifts and squats, and then had to do that lat test, which is never a good thing. But right around a Thursday, after having not eaten any or less than 25 grams of carbs for 4 days, it dramatically just like you feel so tired. All I want to do is just drink coffee all day. So, but I know on Saturday I'm gonna eat some pancakes. And I'm gonna crush some pancakes. I'm probably gonna have some oatmeal and maybe some white rice. And I'm gonna lay around and sweat all day.
Not really on topic, but one of the things that we talked about, we were in a meeting yesterday and just talking a bit about training and shit with some guys. But John, what you mentioned is the best way to get strong is to lift with the strongest people you know. So that's clearly a challenge with you because I'm not nearly as strong with you. Does the Tendo unit bring that competitive? Like, does that fulfill the competitive edge for you?
A little bit. I kind of had a little bit of a setback this week in that on Saturday, our Uncle Dave was in town for Virginia Beach, and so he came to visit us. And he got in Friday, and we got up early at 5:45 to come in and train on Saturday morning because I had a full day of housework ahead of me to be able to get ready for the girls' party on Saturday. And so we got in here early, and I'd already done all my training. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to come up with something. I want to test a little something. I want to try to hammer the hamstrings a little. So I loaded up 4 plates in the sled, and we did. I just programmed this on FieldStrong for anybody wondering where it came from. And we did 60-yard power walks to 20 reverse hypers with 4 plates, and then it was 10 reps with the safety squat bar to do the reverse hypers with the safety squat bar around your neck. And I did that for 6 rounds. And I felt fine when I left. Went home, sat down, proceeded to install turf and get the house ready and all that for the next until 2:30 in the afternoon. Finally got something to eat. And I have had hamstring soreness so bad that I couldn't bend over to pick anything up for 4 days. And so today we came in and pulled some heavy deadlifts and some squats, and actually it felt better. But I haven't had muscle soreness that lasted 4 days ever in my life.
High school.
High school. So I'm like, it's either the no carb or the fact that mixing reverse hypers, back extensions with 65 pounds on your back and 60 yards power walking is not a good thing to fucking mix. So I threw it at the FieldStrongers because I want to see if they're getting the same hamstring soreness I have. Because if I got it, fuck them, they should have it too. But the Tendo unit has added a really fun element to our training because it allows you to compete on an equal plane. Let's say Luke's pulling 405 of the deadlift and I'm pulling 500, and we're both pulling, doubles, triples, or whatever we're pulling, we have the ability to be able to say, okay, these are our set percentages. This is where we're at. Now, who can move the bar faster? And so it allows you to kind of train. I mean, it's for the same reason we love the monolift, is that we can, Luke and I, who's, what are you, 5'6"?
But I wear lifts, so it puts me to 5'10".
Yeah, so Luke's 5'10", I'm 6'5" or 6'6", so it allows us to squat, so we can just rise and lower the mono, so we only have to squat off of one bar, which is nice, because then you get to train with somebody.
So all you Lone Rangers out there, find yourself a training partner and find a way to normalize it so you guys can go head to head. It's the only way to do it.
Yeah, well, you know how you do it.
Are you guys deadlifting sumo or conventional, or they alternate?
Well, we actually found a new deadlift where we try to get our feet on the outside of the plates. It's called Extreme Sumo.
Well, I've been straddling the bar. I've been straddling the bar, grabbing in front and then behind.
That's a deadlift. It's called a suitcase deadlift.
Yeah, but I jump with the bar. So, you really push that gooch
up. A lot of thrusting motion, huh?
No, we just do conventional.
Yeah, no. We're pulling.
I asked that because I had some lower back soreness, and I deadlifted earlier during the week, so I'm like, you know what, maybe I'll because I rarely pull sumo. And so I'm like, you know what, I'll give it a shot. So I started deadlifting sumo stance, and I fucking felt weak as shit.
What, because you never sumo deadlift?
Yeah,
I do the same. I'm doing the same way, Denny. Yeah.
I was just, I've at some of the other seminars I've been to, they kind of push sumo, so I know I could pull heavier conventional than I can sumo.
Well, think about Louis' big contention is that the wider stance builds the strength of the hips, and that if you squat wide and pull wide, you should always be stronger squatting narrow, pulling narrow. But somebody that does nothing but squats narrow, pulls narrow, will never be strong on the wide. So I don't know, it makes sense, but I think, at least for me, that if I squat wide all the time and just work on building the hips, I end up kind of losing a little bit of that quad strength. And then when I come in close, I don't always feel like I have the same power, which just means that if you want to be good in a movement, you have to train it. If you want to be good at that rep range or that range of motion or that stance or whatever, you have to do it. So, and then there's also something to be said about, greasing the groove and specificity of movement, that, hey, you know what, I'm going to put a bar on my back and I'm going to squat and I'm going to do it and I'm going to get really good at this. And, when you run into some of the conjugate stuff, it's like they're rotating the lifts and the bars so much that the idea of avoiding accommodation, but, at some point you can kind of, wear too many hats or too many seats, and that's why we kind of, even though we rotate lifts, we have a very, very much smaller pool than, let's say, 275 different lifts.
Just throwing that out there, do you think the sumo could kind of hammer the hamstrings? I know we see a lot of females that just quad up deadlift. Do you think that's a way to throw some definite hamstring into deadlifts?
Well, I've seen people, usually the people that are the best sumo deadlifters are usually a longer torso, shorter leg person. Usually a longer leg, shorter torso person will always be a better puller conventional style. So I think some of that sumo conventional stuff goes back to almost body type a little bit. But I could definitely see, but it's funny, for every time somebody makes an absolute like that, I can think of an exact opposite. Yeah. Like my wife, for example, Kate, had a body weight of 123, had a 140 kilo back squat, so she squatted 308 at 123 in just a belt, and she couldn't pull more than 240 pounds on the conventional deadlift, and the first day she sumoed, she pulled 315. Now, she's super quad dominant in her squat, but for some reason, she could get her feet wide and a little shorter leg, a little longer torso. She could get her feet super wide and just reach down and only had to pull the bar 3 inches. And she's like, "Oh my God, this is so much easier." And I was like, "Well, yeah, because you only have to pull the bar 3 inches." So I think for in terms of angles, really depending on that body type, I think it's most advantageous. But I definitely think that. If you're doing a sport of powerlifting, I mean, Louis' deal was you train whatever you don't do in a contest. So I remember when I was out there, he's like, I know you pull conventional, so I want you to pull nothing but sumo deadlifts. And I ended up pulling a bunch of sumos and ended up, shortly thereafter, PRing my 4-inch deficit deadlift. I think I pulled 645 for a 5 or something, and hadn't pulled anything conventional, just been doing sumo. And so it kind of goes back to that idea that, all of a sudden, we say it, I've said for so many, 74 times I've been on this podcast, that the biggest changes you'll see is when you have a huge change. People wonder I started the Renegade diet or this diet and I did this and I made these phenomenal gains. Well, that's because all of a sudden you went from doing one thing to doing this violent, change. I mean, people that go from a machine-based HIIT program and then all of a sudden go into a strength-based program make good gains. People that are coming off of, doing some form of hammer strength and jogging aerobics at the Globo Gym, they go into a CrossFit gym where all of a sudden now they're doing high intensity, functional move or functional moves performed at high intensity. This and all of a sudden they have phenomenal gains because the training stimulus is so different. People come in and they're eating a high carb, low fat, moderate protein diet. Next thing you know, they're lowering the carb, up in the protein, up in the fat, and they have huge gains. So I think everything works, but not everything works forever. And where people really see gains is when they all of a sudden start flipping it out. And I think that's where a lot of the conjugate stuff really ends up having value, is that it's taking people out of their common movement patterns and putting them into new ways. And it just ends up working really, really well. I mean, for us, whenever people ask me about chains and bands and bars, I always refer to this idea as the chaos training, that you're training for everything to go wrong. Like all of a sudden you sit in the squat and the safety bar pushes you forward, and so it forces you to arch your back to stay in a good position. And the bands, the chains, all these things are pulling you out of position. And I think that's what is most valuable with a lot of these different things. You're putting in people in different movement patterns and forcing them to adapt, and that adaptation is a big strength.
Going with the bands and chains, you remember, John, when we had Hatfield on, he was kind of talking about how he seemed to not be a big fan of throwing bands on because he felt like it slowed you down.
No, well, he originally was against the chains and bands, and then forwarded me, when we had our really killer talk, he forwarded me all this research a guy had done on compensatory acceleration and using bands and chains. And what they found was that muscle activation and fatiguing of neuromuscular pathways and rate coding and firing of muscle fibers, everything happens in sequence. And they found that for shorter movements like the bench press and the deadlift, that they were able to recruit more muscle using some form of accommodating resistance. So that really forced him to have to go back and look at accommodating resistance and looking at the jump stance bands and the chains. And the bands and the chains are two different animals. So it's not really fair to lump them together in terms of accommodating resistance. Now you think about as you squat and the chain link kind of drops, it's going to naturally, as the chains fall, start pulling you in different directions. And so there was always this idea that chains build brutal strength, that as you get down, that chain goes and then you have to drive against it, whereas the bands, you have the weight of that elasticity eccentrically pulling you to the earth or pulling you down, and then as you get into that amortization phase, you're going to have to really work on the speed of the movement to be able to go from that eccentric, isometric to concentric movement. And and then you're fighting gravity and the force pulling you down again. So they're just two, I think, two very, very different, different adaptate or effects. Whereas I think the bands are super hard on the nervous system. Like I just got a text from one of the strength coaches that we I help out with some stuff. Is at a college down in Texas, and he asked me a little bit about doing some dynamic accommodating resistance on a volume day for their football players, and I was like, yeah, I would do it, and I would just make sure the bar weight was fast enough where they were using the tendo and trying to be between that 0.7 to 0.8 meters per second, and they would add accommodating resistance, but I would use the chains during the season and maybe use the bands in the off season, just because for those guys the recovery is such a key factor. And I just know that when I first went out to Westside, there's a big guy out there named Bull who Mike who's kind of I've been a stalwart there for a long time, and I remember him talking about, bands are hard on the nervous system, and it's tough to recover, and you can overdo the bands too much, and you have to be smart in how you're kind of using them. And he's like, if you do too much band, it's really going to fry you, and you might not, you might really have trouble ever recovering. And so at that point, I realized, like, oh, you know what, the bands have their place, and the chains have their place, and you got to kind of, move them in and out and periodize with them, and, wave them in, do one, do both, and, start, mix them up.
All right, or go ahead, Tex.
I was just going to say, kind of with the Hatfield, the common theme, though, that he wanted to emphasize was speed. I read that research that he sent John, and people just say band, people just say change, and how they apply it, I mean, they lose that speed. When I was in Texas, they squatted twice a week. Monday, heavy-ass chains. Thursday, bands. But they were just fucking throwing weight, and it was just slow grinding. So people can't just do bands for bands. They needed to kind of take that cat approach with the speed.
See, that's what I kind of thought with, that's where I thought Hatfield was saying, like, the bands would create that slow grinding. I mean, I understand like, if you can increase your speed standing up with this band tension pulling you down, in theory, you take the bands off, you would stand up faster. I mean, I get all that, but I was kind of confused after he had said, or I felt like he kind of said, I don't like the bands, period, because they create that grinding squat, the grinding movement.
No, I had originally, like, when I had read stuff, and when you start looking at the compensatory acceleration, and you start, and you go back and you read some of that original stuff, it appeared that, he had not really liked accommodating resistance, that, the idea of, being able to, bar speed was key. Now, the way Doc was doing it, and when they originally kind of first theorized compensatory acceleration, he had a guy that came in, and I think he called it like a torquemeter.
Yeah.
So they had some guy come in from a lab who brought in this deal, and he called it a torquemeter. And what it measured,
like a hydraulic thing.
Yeah, it was like some weird deal. And so he could measure the force at which he was driving into the bar. So we measured bar speed, and I think when he said he was doing his, like, singles at 800 or 825 or whatever he was taking, he was driving like 1,250 to 1,400 pounds into the bar. So they were able to, get a measurement and then go back and extrapolate it. And so he was consistently at 1,400. So he knew going into that contest that if he had been driving 1,400 pounds of power or strength into the bar, and that was the force he was driving, then he was good for his 1,000 plus. And even though he'd never squatted 1,000 in training, so he goes out and he blasts that 1,000 up. His training partners had been taking heavier lifts, but were like, 975 or 875, 900, and those guys were driving like 925 pounds into the bar. I mean, they were all like pretty close. The force was pretty close to what they were doing. So he knew going in there he had it. Now, I don't know what a torquemeter is. I mean, I don't know anything about it, but I know that when we started looking at, like, okay, what's the force at which you're driving into the bar, and and we play with it all the time. I mean, I know I can be the same off the floor, and if I don't finish my lift explosively, my time's going to be down. If all of a sudden you get past the point where you're at the mechanical advantage and you don't speed up, you're going to lose time. So, when I originally started talking, and one of my first questions is, what do you think of accommodating resistance in chains and bands? And I was expecting him to be like, rat fuck him. And he was like, no, I really have changed my stance on it. I have this idea. But he said, if you're adding chains in the bar or chains and bands and not working the acceleration of the academy, think about as the mechanical advantage increases in accommodating resistance, so does the weight. So if you don't keep driving against the bar and working to speed it up, if you let the accommodating resistance effectively slow you down or beat you, then it's negating the effect. So it's just kind of interesting. And his deal, especially what he sent over, is that on shorter movements like a deadlift and a bench press, using something like the bands helps activate more muscle fibers, which was really his goal with the accommodating resistance.
All right. And Tex, you think that's obviously what you were seeing when you went down to that school?
No, Tex saw a fucking train wrecking at 5 miles an hour in front of him.
Let the man speak for himself. Maybe he says he can say more eloquently.
I question the application of the program being applied. I'll say that.
Okay.
I think it was more like a 911, John, what the fuck are these guys doing? And I'm like, they are effectively reading what other people are doing and applying it poorly with no understanding of what they're doing is basically what would happen. So I mean, but people do it all the time. I mean, I've seen people many times be like, oh, the West Side guys are the strongest guys in the world, and they squat with chains and bands, and have no concept of how what the load is, how they're doing it, how they've built up, how they periodize it, how they use it in the dynamic, how they use it in the max effort, how they put it all together. They just hear, oh yeah, these guys are throwing chains and bands on bars, so let's get some chains and bands, let's throw them on some fucking bars, and let's get rocking. And
I kind of feel like that's what I see when I do like my own is traveling around the area and watching people's programs. It's like they're just doing it because they're just repeating like the same shit that they see. It's like, oh, these guys do it, so I'll do the same thing.
Yeah, it's a monkey see, monkey do. Instead of realizing like, hey, there's a place in this. I mean, there's a place for bar, in the training. I mean, it really goes back to like understanding the system and then having a real understanding of like what the training effect is and what you're looking to jump out and how you're looking to do it. I mean, it's kind of an endless amount of possibilities, but it's kind of this idea that doesn't really matter. We'll just throw as much as we can at the wall and hope to God something happens that's good, which seems to be most people's training idea.
Break a lot of eggs to make an omelet.
Well, we had a funny deal the other day. We had a lady who I guess had been following CrossFit football and wanted to jump on the Field Strong stuff, and she ended up looking at the Field Strong for like 10 minutes and then realizing that it wasn't for her. And so we were kind of getting some feedback from her, and she made a comment. She's like, I really did well in CrossFit football because it was such low volume. And I just kind of laughed a little bit because I remember when CrossFit football was a high volume, high intensity strength program, but now
one-way path to hell.
Well, but now here we are 4 or 5 years later, and we'll do 2 lifts, and then you do a sub 15-minute Metcon, and in terms of like what we're seeing out there in the world in terms of functional fitness CrossFit land, fuck everybody, instead of like because it's really the only way you got to go. I mean, when you classify intensity as effort and not as a percentage, then people's really only thing to do is just add more and more and more, and then you get what we call a Christmas tree program where you just start hanging ornaments. And I just kind of laughed, and when I saw that we were a low volume program, and I was like, wow, it's supposed to be high intensity, lower volume. The problem is now people are just fucking.
Well, relatively speaking, because that's where the market has gone with I guess the quote unquote premium programming model, to the desire to really across the board increase work capacity. You're going to have to do more, and then that's also physiologically and psychologically what people like is that the hamburger effect, right? You want to be that sizzling burger at the end of the workout. It's all ground up.
Yeah. But I mean, and I like to think like, but what's interesting that she looks at the Field Strong and she's like, oh, I'm like, well, it's really.
And specifically, just so she was an archer, and when she shopped it around, she saw a lot of sprinting, and she said, and one of her concerns is like, hey, there's a lot of sprinting. If this is more for like an athlete to be moving around and through space and do things that are athletic, she's like, I just draw a bow and release. That was her deal. She was
Olympic archer. Yeah, I mean, but we, and that's what the Field Strong program is really about. It's like this athletic-based program. We're going to get you to change direction. We're going to jump. I mean, we have a ton of dedicated plyos, and if you don't want to do things athletic, then you know what?
It might not be for you. Yeah,
it's not for you. And you know what? We're not for everybody.
That's impossible. Don't say that, John. I'll save that person. So Tex, I know you got a hard stop, bro. Let's talk Wayne's Army, because I know you got a lot of things going on.
Yeah, a lot of fun stuff going on. So I needed not necessarily a gimmicky approach. I know we were one of the first ones to apply that full ice bath challenge, but instead of a bucket, you fully submerge yourself. And we caught some fire with there, and then we lost it a little bit. So then I was just kind of tapping my head about how can we take a proactive approach that not necessarily is an embarrassing gimmick thing. So then I got this just idea for a flash fundraiser, and just put it on all of our fundraisers so we know they're active. They've signed up, they're involved, And Will Jones, one of our top fundraisers last year, who lost his nephew to pediatric cancer, he kind of volunteered this $2,000 to one of the top fundraisers. So we decided to break it up and into 4 flash fundraising drives. And the winner of each one just receives a $500 donation from Will. And,
Team Welcome.
yeah, Kate and John won the first one, but then we had just a pretty short, tight race, our last one. So we're having a lot of fun with this thing, and people are catching on to neuroblastoma. And we just lost $45,000 with a month to go.
So what I've learned about my network is they are either unsuccessful, cheap, lazy, or are not on Facebook. There's you and your extraordinary league of gentlemen, whoever you're friends with, and Kate on your ivory tower just handing out donation tickets.
Yeah, we
Unbelievable.
no, we've gone and tapped some of our bigger friends. I mean, I was guilting people last night, being like, I was like, you need brownie points. You need to get to St. Peter's Gate, and this might be the only thing that saves you. So don't say no to kids in pediatric cancer, because at that point somebody's bad's going to come look for you. So I mean, we're using by guilt, by hook or crook, any type of method we can to somehow raise as much money for this thing as we can. I mean, yeah, it's so worthwhile, and the coolest part is all proceeds go to charity. So I mean, if you give it, we're donating it. So it's pretty cool. I mean, I always had kind of a negative kind of connotation with some of the charity stuff that I used to see in my previous job, and you know, when finally we decided to kind of do this, we had to say, hey, you know what, we want to make this thing as squared up, and you know, make sure that the money that we're raising is actually going to where we need it to go, and instead of, you know, other places.
So that's part of the deal at the seminar. When I'm like, listen, I've been there. I'm an X-Files guy. I think people are spending that money on yachts. They're not spending on cancer or lymphoma research or any of that shit. I'm like, but here's the good news. Like, you're looking, you know us. What are we gonna do with it? We're gonna donate it all. We're not a bunch of scumbags. So
yeah,
you can be confident in the donation.
We work in an office that's mainly a weight room. So,
so you know, I think that should comfort people. Is they know the champions of the organization. They know the chairman.
And you get a cool shirt.
And you get a shirt.
Yeah.
You're part of the community.
Yeah, and then when we see the shirt, that entitles you to talk to Tex for at least 2 hours about strength conditioning and have him buy you beers.
Yep. If you're seen in public with Wade's Army shirt, there are a number of scenarios that are all beneficial for you. Maybe a pat on the butt. Maybe a shirtless hug from Chelsea and Callie at the same time.
Luke Summers, open mouth kiss.
Hey, you know, I don't discriminate.
If you see me at a bar with the Wade's Army, I will definitely buy you drinks.
For sure, without a doubt. And if you are part of Wade's Army and you see another person with Wade's Army on at a bar, then you need to buy that person a drink. That's just how it works. That's the club.
If you're wearing the shirt, then you got to buy me a drink?
No, one way or the other.
Okay, as long as
someone's getting a drink.
As long as somebody's getting a drink.
Yeah, it's my go-to airport shirt, and I hope to kind of find that Wade's Army guy in the airport or gal and buy them a beer.
There you go.
Tex is like, how you doing? Want to buy you a beer.
I'd like to get to know you.
Yeah. In a biblical sense.
Yeah, but we're rocking, and one of our last our flash fundraiser, the fourth one right before Wade's Day, is going to be live on Power Athlete Radio. I'm just thinking of this now and now. Listening it. So
nice. Yeah, Luke just went in to fuse his burst as he thought about how he was going to make that happen. But don't worry, if you task Luke Summers with it, he'll figure it out.
It's happening.
Yeah, we're actually going to start buying drones and start flying drones around, and I don't know what we're going to do with it. But.
Well, here's the thing. John's like, here's what we need, because John's, you know, the idea guy, and he's like, we need to keep the video up, but we need to videotape sprinting and plyo work, but it has to be next to Amanda or whoever's doing the demo. Like, well, we need to buy a drone. We need to hook up a GoPro to it. We need to fly that drone next to Amanda as she's sprinting.
What do you guys think?
What do I think? I think it's absolutely.
I think it's genius. Well, what if we had a drone flying around in the gym while we were lifting weights? It was just circling, filming everything.
Well, someone has to command the drone.
Why don't you just get a security that rotates around the gym and just cut the footage?
No, that doesn't make sense.
Because
military device.
Yeah, I just like the idea of like putting a GoPro on your belt buckle and just talking to people's stomachs.
That idea is terrible.
You're the only one that-
Jump to conclusions, man.
Well, my belt's higher, so it might be your throat.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
So Playtech, what are you doing?
Nothing. Getting ready to do class. I was going to comment on the Wade's Army thing, though. The Wade's Army T-shirt is one of a kind in terms of capturing people's attention. I wear it to school once in a while and around town or whatever, and almost every time it's on my body, somebody is like, what in the hell is Wade's Army? And when I was at the NPGL tryout combine, the first one, which was in Atlanta, I noticed a guy, Scott Wilson, who's an Australian power athlete, had the Wade's Army shirt on, and another guy had a Wade's Army shirt, and it was like instantaneously I knew like I had family there. I could go up and talk to them like, hey, what's up, Wade's Army guys? Do you know what I mean? So it's a really neat shirt that gets a lot of attention and gets people talking about it. So it's an awesome design.
Nice, awesome,
It's a secret underground club.
dude. It is. It's like Fight Club,
Of
but
like-minded individuals.
we're helping kids with T-shirts.
It's true.
So how's the any reflections on the grid stuff? I mean, was there like anything that you left and you thought to yourself like, wow, that was amazing? Like anything that was really, really you left there and you were like, shit, like this is some revelation that you had?
Yeah, I mean, I guess not any revelation as much as I just I really liked it a lot and hope that there's another season. And I got to watch some of the matches on like NBC Sports and NBC, and I was really proud of the way they were presented. It was I had some friends watch it, like neighbors that don't like they don't even walk on a fucking treadmill, and they were like, it was really exciting. I can understand it. It's neat that you're a part of it. So it was kind of fun. I would definitely do it again if there's a season 2 and stay. And then I guess like from training perspective, I came out of it realizing that I need to get stronger at some things in terms of the whole like CrossFit kind of thing, and so trying to adjust some of my training and diet to nail some of that stuff. In fact, I just got some equipment delivered today, and tomorrow I'll be building out a 6x4 rig with a rope and rings in my backyard.
Nice.
So I can practice that. I mean, I'm a single guy now, so there's no wife to tell me. So I can go on the weight salon and work on the gymnastics. And the other benefit, or the reason that this is how I'm justifying it, is that my boy is 4 and he needs to learn how to climb a rope and train his grip and be gymnastic-y. So it's like an investment in my offspring's athletic future.
Nice.
So,
That seems like a plenty good excuse.
yeah,
Typically,
it costing me just under $1,000 to have 15-foot boom and then a 12-foot boom for the rings and then 2 pull-up bars and then 2 squat racks.
What's that? The Rogue Castro ring?
No, actually, there's a local company here called Pure Strength Equipment, and they build out some stuff, like a big rig in one of my buddy's backyards. And so I just contacted them. I said, like, look, and they do all the local competitions. And I said, this is what I'm looking for. I'll take old, used, broken down equipment from, like not broken down, but haven't been broken down from the competitions. And so we chatted and negotiated a little bit. And I'm going to go pick it up, drill it into the cement patio in my backyard. And it'll be, if nothing else, it'll be a conversation piece when I have folks over to drink.
Yeah, well, they get in the. You can have a couple beers and go in the back
Beans
and be
straight.
like, "How many butterfly pull-ups you got?"
Yeah.
75.
Prove it.
Nice.
So that's it. Just training hard and trying to keep on keeping on with the science. I just got elected president of the Applied Evolutionary Science Society. So,
congratulations.
yeah,
Congratulations.
it's no big deal, I guess. It's an international society, so now I just gotta like lead that ship to do cool things.
Just
Dude,
more commitment.
On a side note, I watched the movie Lucy. When
Is it good?
yeah, it's kind of interesting. I was like watching it and I was thinking about Playtech. I was like, so the premise of the movie is these evil guys synthesize this drug that's like CPH6 or something, and it's a hormone or a chemical that's released during pregnancy that actually creates like the spark of growth for the fetus, or so they say. I don't know. I didn't go check to see if it was bullshit or not. But they synthesize this drug, and they end up like kidnapping these people, and they have it in like probably kilo packets. And the way that they're going to smuggle it into places is they basically put an incision in somebody and they stuff it in their guts, and then they like make them go across the border with it. Well, they take who's it, Scarlett Johansson, and she's one of the people, one of the mules, and then some dude ends up like kicking her in the stomach, and it like ruptures and like gets in there, and like her, what do they say? We use 10% of her brains. Well, it somehow does something where she ends up using like 20 and 30% of her brain, and it's got Morgan Freeman, who's obviously this, I don't know what he's probably like an evolutionary biologist, like neurologist or something, who's talking about like the evolution of brain and this whole deal, and he's kind of narrating through it, and like it got a little hokey when she started being able to control matter and like make people explode, but
no, that's totally accurate.
I was watching it with Playtech. She ends up like harnessing 100% of her brain, and she turns herself into like a computer chip. And like,
wait a minute!
I swear to God,
hang on, are you spoiling this?
She turns herself into a scan disk.
Zip disk?
No, like the thing, like the little flash drive. She turns herself into a flash drive at the end.
You are so full of shit.
So now you all have to go see this movie.
I'm gonna.
Yeah.
I can watch it.
I got it on my phone.
That's Luke's dream.
Yeah. Well, no, there were no wires. So, like, Luke didn't like it. Everything was wireless, but the better part is she can control any type of electricity. So she, like, calls the dude on the phone and then, like, is in his TV and, like, talking through all his devices. She's like, oh, I can control electricity and matter.
So, Steve,
what's
up with that?
I was like, so if we find a secret drug, I can use 50% of my brain, can I basically control matter?
No, of course not. That'd be the worst capacity to have on a woman, to be able to tap into your life 24/7.
Yep, that's it.
Yeah, but you control, half of your brain is used. She can actually go back in time and scrolls through time, which was kind of interesting.
That's what your brain does.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. Like,
I am going to disabuse everybody, all 4 people that listen to this podcast. We do not just use 10% of our brain. And like, here's the analogy I always give in class. What percentage of your heart do you use?
100.
Yeah, right. Why the fuck would you use 10% of your brain?
Because
mostly college was rough.
Whoa.
The government does it to us, dude. That's what when you're born, they give you those shots.
Denny, what are you talking about?
No, Denny's on it. Denny, right.
Denny just ride his horse. You remember in Wedding Crashers where he said, they say we only use 10% of our brains? I only think we use 10% of our hearts. But you know what? Luke Summers, he uses more.
110.
Oh, Jesus.
So, Steve, we use 100%
So we use 100% of our brain?
Yeah, if you didn't use 100% of your brain, they call that condition dead.
Yeah, no. But what about the people that lose half their brain in an accident and they still, like, function normal?
They use 100% of what's left of their brain. If you lose half of your brain, you do not.
So that means if I have a bigger brain, then technically I should be smarter because I can use more brain. So it's like more horsepower. Like if everybody uses 100% of the horsepower, then you just got to get a bigger engine.
No, because it's relative based on what's called the encephalization quotient. So it's log brain to log body weight. So since you're like 6'6" and 400 pounds, you're probably dumber.
It's true. Hey, that's science, John.
So if I got down to 155 pounds, would I be smaller or smarter?
If you had the same size brain, you'd be relatively higher on an encephalization quotient. So the encephalization quotient is used more for things like interspecies relationships. So, for example, an ostrich has a huge body but a small brain, so it's not so bright. Whereas something like a dolphin has a small body and a huge brain, and it's considered quote-unquote brighter. It can solve more problems, that sort of thing.
Well, they in the movie he talked about the dolphin is the one creature on the planet that uses the most of its brain, and they were talking about like the sonar that obviously the dolphin has evolved to have this sonar that is more sophisticated than anything we've ever created. So they were using the dolphin as an example. So how do we get to use at least? Well, if we use 100% of uranium, then that kind of ruins the movie for you, Luke.
No, I'm gonna go to that. I'm still looking at that thumb drive portion. I'm not buying it.
So she turns herself into basically a thumb drive.
Listen,
It's crazy. She like turns into like this black mess, and it just like kicked out, and the guy's like holding it, and he's looking at it, and it's obviously her, and he's like, movie ends. I'm like,
fuck out of here.
I swear to God, it was so bad that I was like, Luke Summers, this is his movie.
Sounds like it's got an Emmy coming.
Yeah. I think Emmys are for TV shows, aren't they?
Yeah, but this is that good. It's just
You guys, I
Luke's
gotta go teach.
all right. Thanks.
All right, see ya.
All right, see you guys.
All right,
See you,
so
Steve. You know Steve gets all excited when he gets to geek out on some of that stuff, and he can pull out these. Oh, it's called the whatever quotient. I mean, he just gets all fired up.
I don't believe
He's
it.
making those names up.
yeah, he's full of crap.
Yeah, because Tex makes it. It's so awesome that he's off and he just can't argue. But Tex made a good point. Like, there's brain trauma. There are patients that have brain trauma, have portions of brain removed, and they seem to function at 100% capacity, which would make you believe that was non-valued tissue mass in terms of cognitive functioning. Right, Tex? Am I right?
Yeah, and then
You're right.
I shared something with Luke about this guy who got struck by lightning, and then all of a sudden he could play like classical piano and speak Portuguese. It's like a switch was turned on, you know? I don't know.
Yeah, but then he kept peeing in the refrigerator, so it didn't help.
Hey, man, your clock won't flush.
That was a buddy of mine in college. He used to get so messed up that he kept talking about like he had a kind of a weird deal. He's like, yeah, man, every time I get messed up, I go take a leak and God keeps turning on the lights for the bathroom. And like he kept telling us his story, and then like finally a week later, he's like, yeah, that wasn't God. I kept peeing in the refrigerator. I was like, how messed up are you? He's like, that's pretty fucked up. I was like, did you have to go back? He's like, well, yeah, I had to do an experiment. I got that fucked up again, and sure enough, he's like, God turned it on, but I ended up waking up in front of his refrigerator in a pile of urine. So he was like, yeah, it wasn't that. I was peeing in the refrigerator.
Well, what about Phineas Gage? You guys ever hear the story of Phineas Gage, the construction worker who, like, somehow a pipe was impaled through his head, and he was able to carry on normal conversations, like had no effects of a freaking steel pipe being driven through his skull. I think his skull is in, like, the Smithsonian. No shit.
And then did he live? Yeah, it was like a piece of rebar, wasn't it?
Something like that, yeah. He totally lived. All right. I should, you know what? I should look up the stories. I'm sure Luke's Googling it right now.
No, I'm not.
But Phineas Gage, Phineas Gage.
Oh yeah, and he was like an alcoholic, bad person. As soon as he got the thing in the head, he turned into like a good human. I remember that.
Yeah, we have to have a Grill Playtech episode where it's like, well, what about this? And then he just gets to tell us why.
Well,
So
in
I think we
the
need to-
movie Lucy, if I use 100% of my brain, can I turn it into a thumb drive?
Well, here's what I think. I think we need to diversify our podcast offering. One, that's a training podcast. Two, that is a movie review podcast of movies everyone's already seen. We try to get them to watch it again.
Yeah, I like that. It's actually pretty smart.
And then
We're like,
others
so
will play tech.
Revenge of the Nerds.
This story set takes place at the
The Tri-Lambs at Adams College.
those moves sure know how to party.
Yeah, you stole my line.
Moose.
Oh, God.
But what else do we got? Tex, I know you got to pop off. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Well, we can talk plyos, we can talk injury prone, we can talk articles, and
Let's do injury.
Let's go injury prone. That's a term you hear a lot of.
So I caught up some article about I checked in on some old Texas guys that I knew were injured to see if they were playing, and I found one of their quotes, and I led the article off with it, and I thought it was pretty powerful. And right after I found that, RG3 got injured, and Luke and I just had a quick conversation. Like, there's got to be something going on with his preparation, his training, and I know I live in DC, so that 405 squat for IG3 was floating around the internet. So it just got me thinking about the past, and I found one quote I really liked. It was, "Sharp pencils do not translate into sharp performance." And this label of injury prone, it's almost just a slap in the face for a strength coach of, you didn't do your fucking job, or you suck. So I just kind of pieced together this article based off some experiences and talks with John and Luke. Did you get a chance to read it, Denny?
Of course, man. Yeah, I read it.
Any take? Let me know, Luke. Luke, you walked through it. What'd you think?
It's exactly what you put together. Kelly, no sneezing. We're on a podcast.
Sorry.
Yeah. It was exactly what we talked about. When he first busted his stuff up, and we were talking about his Subway commercial and his valgus knee drop and the vertical jump test, and no, I thought it was great, man. And it's I think it's an easy way out, and it's just a perfect example of the philosophy of put together something for the best guy on the field, and it'll make that best guy better. But I think that's the curse of the gifted. A lot of the philosophy that we talked about at the seminar.
Yeah, and I know we just have some kind of coach's responsibility conversations about the functional movement screening, and it just how they test its validity. It just drives me insane that all these student college athletes, it's their lives, it's their last opportunity. They're basically guinea pigs to test the validity for this test. So you go in, you take 30 to 40 athletes, they go through the functional movement screening, they get their score, and then it's, hey, they scored 14 points or greater or lower. Let's see who fucks up their knees, their ankles, their Achilles, whatever, so we can prove the validity of this test.
Lab rats.
Yeah, fucking lab rats. And it's their last opportunity. Why are we doing all this strength and conditioning? Because these kids are coming to you for help, and these scientists, Javin and Steve, they're just using these kids, taking advantage of them.
Sons of bitches.
Yeah. I know John had some take on injury-prone athletes at his level. Is that more kind of psychological?
Yeah, I mean, it's there's a real, okay, in the NFL and also in college, there's this idea that, the guys that hang out in the training room end up becoming, training room guys, and I had this kind of superstition, I didn't really hang out in the training room. I didn't go in there and, eat lunch and, kick it, and there's guys that are, big, want to hang out in the training room all the time, and I just, over the years, noticed that those guys tended to get injured more. So if I got hurt, I had to go to the training room. I did everything in my power to get out of that place. It's people that, you're around a lot of sick people a lot, and next thing you know, you start to feel sick. So the other thing I found is that the guys that had pretty good mechanics and, ended up not having the injuries. Now in the NFL, there's another big rule that, the guys that play on the ground don't play. So if a guy falls to the ground, you can't keep your feet, especially in the offensive line. If I got a guy that falls down, then I'm going to get hurt. So the only time that people ever got hurt, I broke my leg when we were doing just a little scoop block up to the linebacker from the 3 technique for a little inside zone play, and the tackle was laid off the ball and kind of loafed on the play. So when I hit the 3 technique, came off, hit the backer, that 3 technique ended up making the tackle into the back of my leg and broke my leg. So there's a situation where that fat, lazy piece of shit fucking broke my leg because Trey didn't feel like getting off on the ball, and even though it's 10 years later, I'm still bitter at him about it. But there were situations like that all the time. You had to keep your feet moving. I had to make my block, or the next guy would get hurt. I remember Bubba Miller got his leg broken. I hit a linebacker and ended up dumping him on the ground, and as I hit him, he went on another guy, and that guy domino effected ended up breaking Bubba's leg, and shit, that was kind of the end of Bubba's career. So there's all these kind of different things, and I remember that happened to me pretty young in my career, and I realized, if I hit somebody and I go dump them on the ground, there might be a situation where all of a sudden that guy hurts somebody. So at that point, I realized, like, hey, I got to hit this guy and drive him, not just put him on the ground. And so as you start playing and you know, get a little bit older, you realize, like, yeah, I mean, you know, yeah, I'd love to pancake this dude and fucking dance over him like Florida State style, you know, but that might hurt somebody. So, you know, we had a big deal too. If a young guy ever came in and he, you know, young guys get real excited, they want to start falling down, and if they were on the ground, then, you know, we told them we didn't want to play around him, and we told the coach, like, get rid of this guy. He can't play on his feet. So that's a big one. You know, you got to keep your feet moving. You don't stand around the pile. That was another big one in football. If you stand around the pile, you're going to get lit up. So if you're around the pile, you're either jumping over the pile or going, you know, you're doing something. You just don't ever stop. So
Just fall on it.
yeah, I mean, there was a million different reasons, but I remember seeing the guys that were injured. It was always like weird kind of little deals. I mean, and it was always because somebody else wasn't doing their job, or somebody else did something bad, and the domino effect kind of happened, and the player got hurt. So, you know, the scary thing is when you have a guy like RG3 that ends up having all these non-contact issues where he's just doing normal things and hurts himself, and so you kind of go back and you're like, well, if he's having this many non-contact injuries, what is he doing in his, you know, everyday preparation, his training, that's not allowing him to execute successfully? And, you know, like, just watching him move in space. I mean, we talked about the knees. We talked about a lot of different things. I mean, you know, probably lack of hip strength, lack of hamstring. I mean, the guy's obviously a super gifted athlete. He just needs to, you know, put on a little more armor and a little more muscle, a little more size, and actually probably come visit us and have us help him, because whoever he's working with isn't doing a good job. I mean,
Yeah,
if I had 2 non-contact injuries, I'd fire. I mean, I'd be like, hey, man, you might be my brother or my cousin, but I'm not coming back to see you. I'm going to go find somebody that knows what the fuck they're doing. I mean, it's one of those things, man. I mean, he's going to, you know, if he makes it back from this one, he's going to be at a disadvantage. And, you know, Kirk Cousins is coming in playing well, and you know, now he's got to come in and win his job back. And even though he's the face of the franchise, you know, I mean, on anybody else's team other than Snyder's team, that wouldn't matter for shit. But, you know, Snyder's a capitalist fucking douchebag, and you know, he's gonna put RG3 in because he spent the most money on him. He didn't give a shit about people. I mean, if that dude really cared about people, the minute that the whole Redskin thing came up with the name, he would have been like, you know what, this is about image, and you know what, this is about the right thing to do. And you know, if this many people are upset by it, then you know what, I'm gonna do the right thing, and I'm gonna change the name. And all he had to do, and the guy would have been, you know, in America's pocket, everybody would have been like, oh, that's a quality dude. You know, I mean, it's whether or not you think the name is right or wrong, it still offends people, and it's still a derogatory term to a race or race or a group of people that, you know, we did some bad stuff to for a long time. So if it's upsetting them and you want to change it, you know what? Fucking who cares? Change the name. It's not going to devalue your franchise. So what, you got to go out and buy new equipment and rebrand everything?
That you do anyways.
Well, no, but then where does it end? Does the Cleveland Indians have to change their name? You know?
Well, no. I mean,
are the Milwaukee Brewers going to have to change their name because they're related to alcohol and there's all kinds of DUIs?
Think about this. What about if there was a team that was the New York Blackfaces?
Well, yeah.
No, well, hey, listen, Denny. Now, if there was a team that was called the Blackfaces, do you think that team would still be called the Blackfaces?
No way.
No
way.
There would be no way it would.
100%. I mean, you know what? Like, yeah. I mean, is the Fighting Irish? Is that derogatory towards white people?
Could be.
Yeah. Well, why are the Irish fighting? Because they're drunk.
Because they're drunk all the time.
I thought we just disagreed on the ending.
Right. Yes. So I mean, like, you know, like, yeah, I'm Irish, and do I see Notre Dame and feel pride from it, because that's a, you know, like, like, I don't think the Cleveland Indians are going to have a problem. I mean, I don't know everything, but, like, you know, if
look at their symbol or their mascot, you know what I mean? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I'm not agreeing that.
Oh yeah, Dan Snyder's
a slippery slope, though.
Yeah, I mean, it is a slippery slope, but here's the deal.
Yeah,
this is the problem, in that the day we're in, which is 2014, the things that really don't matter, like, you know, like, this is the worst thing that we have. We have to have a congressional fucking hearing on the fact that the Redskins need to change their name. Like, that's the best use of our time? No. Like, we have so many big fucking problems in this country, but what we've done is we've effectively distract people with minutia so that they stay away from the really, really big problems that we have going on around us.
That's
so,
the fucking media in general.
Yeah, but I mean, if you were an NFL team, and let's really break it down. I mean, even though people live and die with fantasy football and somehow believe that like life really matters around football, it's a fucking game. It's entertainment. So if you are a media company and the idea of having an image and selling a game which is entertainment to people, if something negatively affects that and people turn off the TV or people are not in your corner, then you know what? You have to fucking change it. It's just like for the deal. Do you think they suspended Ray Rice because he punched his wife? No. Well, I mean, he did. He got served it. The reason he got back and he got double jeopardied was because the video went out. And dude, the video. I mean, we watched it. He cracked her. And you know what? That the largest spending demographic for the NFL right now is women. I mean, that whole deal and like. They had an image problem, so they had to go out and they layered the boom on it. I mean, people are still calling for Goodell's head for not laying the boom the first time. And now you got the Adrian Peterson deal. I mean, you have all of these issues. The NFL needs a break. But if I was Dan Snyder, I'd just be like, you know what?
Take it.
Change it. And you know what? Have a contest where you let the fans select the name. Be like, you know what? I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to not be the douchebag that everybody knows me to be. And I'm going to, put out a contest and I'm going to let the fans pick the new name for this, or go and talk to the the Bureau of Native Americans and be like, you know what, I still want to have something that represents the roots of the team, but I want to have a name that is not derogatory and that you do not feel offended. So please come in and help me select a new name. Can we keep the same logo? Let's just pick a new name. And you know what would have happened? Instantly, that guy would have become a likable person and not this guy who just seems like some rich dude that's playing fantasy football with an NFL team and never winning games.
But still, where would you draw the line?
Let me make points back to.
First of all, why do you have to draw a line?
Because it seems like any kind of
Denny, it's the world we live in. Like this isn't 1950s.
I understand it's the world we live in, but I just feel like change the name, whatever, but I mean, it could lead to other things to where if I were to create a team now, I mean, how am I going to think of a name for it without it offending 100% of the population?
Easy.
So somebody won't like it, and is that all it means is that they can just, write a few letters and get a petition going, and then I have to change my product's name because it offended certain people?
Well, Denny, there's a big difference. You're not running a multi-billion-dollar corporation that's predicated on people's supposed or fucking imaginary allegiance to you. So I mean, you got to remember the NFL. Their entire deal is about image. Now, I realize that your business, that your imaginary business that you're running, that's building widgets, is not built upon image. You are selling a product that's completely built upon image. Like, people click on, they want to watch their fantasy football, follow their favorite teams. I mean, they've basically integrated this idea of this sport into America's fabric and America's lives, and people live and die with this stuff. If there's ever a moment where people turn it off and be like, you know what, these guys are a bunch of racist, insensitive assholes, and we have an image problem, you have to change it. I mean, where does it end? It ends where it has to end. And you know what? For me, it ends when I'm not under the microscope. And if I'm Dan Snyder and I got congressional hearings, I have I think it was the the Federal Communications Bureau. FCC. Yeah, FCC just had a deal where a lawyer just submitted that using the term Redskins over the airwaves is a derogatory term, and therefore that needs to be banned. You have a situation where now the people that are televising and showing your games on TV are potentially not even going to be able to say the name of your team because it's a derogatory and offensive statement, like the same as dropping the F-bomb on a public broadcast.
Well, when did the Redskins, when were they established? What if the intent of that organization, whoever created it, I can't think of the name, what if it was to honor, like, the American Indian?
Well, that's what he said.
We look back at it now as Redskin, the name's offensive, but what if it was called, like, the Washington Natural American team, or, and then 20 years from now, the term Natural American is offensive to somebody.
Then you got to reevaluate.
And then you got to reevaluate. And you got to change it.
So everybody's fucked up.
Well,
You can't create any kind
we can pretend that we don't live in that society, but we live in that society. Everybody would love to go back to the 1950s and the 1940s where we're like, okay, you know what? I mean, you got to remember, dude, World War II, we went around and picked up everybody of Japanese descent and put them in internment camps here in Southern California. I have friends whose parents were, basically fearful that, that the Japanese were going to somehow Jap us, which, have you ever heard that term? We got japped. That was being attacked, which comes out of Pearl Harbor, another derogatory statement. So you know what? Like we rounded up all those people and put them in internment camps based on that Pearl Harbor deal in World War II. Now, can you imagine after the Middle East, all this ISIS, all this stuff that's going on in Syria and Iraq, that if we just went around and decided to create internment camps of Muslims and people from the Middle East, I mean, anybody of Middle East descent, we're just going to basically lock you up in a camp because we don't know what you're going to do. I mean, that wouldn't happen today, but you got to remember, I mean, that was just 70 years ago that we did that. So I mean, like let's be realistic. Like we're not living, we're not living in those days. Those days have come and gone. Those days of like when my dad was a kid and used to be able to get on the bus and ride it from Culver City to Venice and lived a good life. I mean, now it's like I tell you not let your kids play outside. So I mean, we live in a different environment, and you know what? We can pretend that we don't. Or you can just say, you know what, this is the world we live in. It's offensive to this group of people. I'm going to potentially blackball people. So you know what, I'm going to turn this from a negative to a positive, and I'm going to actually do the right thing, or more importantly, the honorable thing, and be like, you know what, it is offensive. You know what, here's a race of people, a group of people, and of individuals that we systematically exterminated over a bunch of years. So that, I mean, shit. When Columbus came here, you got to remember, there was a population that was, 2/3 of what we have here in the United States. And within a short period of time, that thing had gone down to 90% had basically gone off with smallpox and other diseases. So, I mean, you have a huge issue with this. And you know what? Whether it's right or wrong, you have a fucking image business. What are you going to just keep fighting people until finally people are like, fuck this guy. You know what? This guy's an insensitive ass. We're not going to go to the games. Sponsors aren't going to pull it. So, FedEx, who's their biggest sponsor, how long is FedEx going to stay in the fight when they're like, hey, you know what? This is bad for business. At that point, these are, it might have been cool, but you know what? It's not cool. People are offended by it. So you know what? I mean, whether or not I think it's right or wrong, and you're like, fuck, where does it end? You know what? It ends when fucking, then people stand up and they're like, you know what? It's done. We're tired of this bullshit. But you know what? People aren't. And the people are still going to bring fights. They're still going to bring battles. And if it upsets people, then you have to change it. And you have to remember the NFL is a media company, that their deal is about TV revenues and profit sharing and getting getting your dollars to buy jerseys and get to seats and concessions and, direct TV NFL package. I mean, all of that goes in. I mean, there's a reason Goodell makes $44 million a year. Because he's tied to the revenue share, and if something and an owner, and if I'm one of the 31 other owners that's looking at Dan Snyder, I'd be like, hey motherfucker, change your name. You know why? Because this is making us all look bad.
Yeah. I mean, you think that's what they're gonna? Or that's what's happening now?
Well, I mean, dude, you honestly think that that stuff that's happening in Baltimore with Ray Rice, you don't think that the Baltimore Ravens are looking around being like, Jesus, or now Minnesota with Adrian Peterson, who has this deal where he's now he's on an inactive deal, and now he's dealing with his legal stuff. And I just read another deal about he had a rape case, that an assault case, and underage minor sex deal. Oh yeah, and a bunch of stuff with his charity, where his underage brother paid for the room with the credit card from the charity that was used in a potential rape case. I mean, just dude, yeah, I mean, everybody has a right to due process, and everybody has a right, all these things, but all this information starts coming out, and it's like, shit, man, all of these things tarnish the badge. I mean, as an NFL player, they talked about, protect the badge, protect the shield. Don't tarnish the shield. All of these things tarnish the shield, and the NFL has to go out and do everything they can to protect their image. And you know what? If this guy doesn't want to change the name, and he and the FCC decides that it's an offensive name and that they can no longer use it in a public broadcast, so then they're going to be like, the Washington team is here, and they can't and they can't show Redskin, they can't show anything. I mean, dude. Like at that point, you're like, wait a minute, this is cutting into our revenue dollars. Fucking change the name. Who cares? It's a fucking name. People are still going to follow the team. It's not like all of a sudden you're going to lose a fan because you're not the Redskins anymore. Well, okay, so now they're the Washington Warriors or the Native American Warriors or something, or something that was less offensive but still within the Native American deal. Let those guys come in. Well, pick us a name. You tell me what name's not offensive to you that will still hold true to the foundations and the ideals of our team. They come in and pick a name? Great. You know what? You just got a co-signed stamp from the Native American Bureau for this is the name that we're going to go with. So, 10 years from now, if they decide it's offensive, it doesn't fly.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, and you know what? And that guy would instantly not only pick up more fans, everybody be like, oh, this guy's actually a pretty good guy, and he did the right thing. You know what? I mean, but you know what? Dan Snyder won't do it. He's a fucking douchebag.
See how it plays out. It might not be up there.
Yeah,
Right?
it's interesting, man.
Yeah.
So, but we're at that. It's that time. I guess we're closing day since we couldn't get more on here. Let's hear. Who doesn't have a playlist on our Spotify?
Who?
The Voice.
Yeah.
Denny.
What?
What's
My
let's get that.
Spotify playlist. Oh man, you know what? Okay.
Let It Go from Frozen.
Yeah.
Right. You got Daniel Tiger. No. You know what? I'm like a metalhead, dude. So
Well, we were working out today, and all of a sudden I looked at Luke, and as Ronnie James Dio's Holy Diver came on, and Luke was like, what is this? And I'm like, the fact that you don't know Ronnie James Dio and one of the greatest rock songs ever? Holy Diver!
It's not how it went down, but go on. I'll roll with it.
Ronnie
But,
James Dio.
So what do you got? What do you got, Denny?
I'm more like
Hello? Oh, looks like Denny hit the disconnect button at his time to
It's time to shine. Okay, so let's pick songs for Denny. I think he's Cherry Pie by Warrant. I think he's When the Children Cry by White Tiger. Just nothing but like power love ballads.
Power love ballads? Like
Yeah.
like Twisted Sister? Did Twisted Sister have a love ballad?
I don't think so. No
Or
way.
do you think Def Leppard?
D. Snyder never did a love ballad. Def Leppard, like I could see Denny with Pour Some Sugar on Me.
Yeah, there you go.
I could see Denny with
I think he's got younger
Poison. Every Rose Has its Thorn.
He's got younger daughters. He's surrounded by it. I think maybe he's
Rose has its thorn.
maybe he's getting wrapped into like the current pop culture.
Well,
like,
let's
Stevie
do-
Ray said.
Let's do like let it go Frozen.
What?
Let's go Let It Go Frozen, and then let's also go with that new song that he likes, the one about all bass, no treble song that I keep hearing on the radio.
Are you guys creating my own playlist for me?
Yeah, we just did.
Yeah.
So we're good.
we got When the Children Cry by White Tiger. We got Cherry Pie by Warrant. We got
we're talking big hair 80s metal. Die Hard metal. All right, I got Pantera. All right, Pantera Using My Third Arm off the Far Beyond Driven album. Pantera also, later on, Phil Anselmo created a band called Superjoint Ritual. A Lethal Dose of American Hatred's the name of that album. So I got songs called Sickness and Personal Insult. Those are great songs. Alice in Chains, pretty much any song off the Dirt album. Suicidal Tendencies,
Oh, nice.
Bring Me Down. A band called DRI, the Dirty Rotten Imbeciles. Right? They had a thrash zone album, so I got Beneath the Wheel, and any song off Metallica's Master of Puppets.
Denny, you a little ICP fan?
I'm not a big ICP fan, dude. I'm not. I thought those guys are just kind of shitty. You're talking about the Insane Clown Posse?
Yeah, dude. Like,
Yeah.
we saw a whole documentary on those. What do they call their people?
Juggalos.
Yeah, Juggalos.
I was into it I was more fascinated with just the culture that they created. And the music was alright. I mean,
It fucking sucked. I remember Doug Brzezinski got me some ICP, and I was like, these fat fucking guys dressed up as clowns suck.
It was
one was
bullshit.
fat, one was skinny.
Yeah,
But it was amazing. I thought they did some great things for some people who needed it. those Juggabos in their trunk full of Faygo. God, some of those lyrics just stuck in my head though.
My younger brother, he was a big ICP fan, and I couldn't get into it. I thought it was just all shit.
Yeah.
I liked Eminem, a white guy
true.
who could freestyle. I mean,
Well,
kind of
I
like
mean,
that.
what's your deal with Eminem? He's been around 15 years, and he's still angry.
You know whose joke that is? Kate Wilborn.
Yeah, that's
there
my
you go,
wife.
Kate. There's your
Yeah, my wife, I remember, because I'm an Eminem fan, we were listening to it, and she's like, what's he been on the radio? I'm like, I don't know, we looked him up like 14 years. She's like, yeah, and he's still angry. Like, how can you still be mad at your mom and still angry after all those years? You just lose credibility. And I was like, yeah, it's great. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to steal that. Eminem, still angry.
And
So,
it was just like a week ago. We probably dropped that joke 150 times because that's her specialty, the same thing over and over. And she goes, you know what? I can't take it anymore. I get no credit for that joke. That was my joke. And I whip my head right to John. He's like, it's her joke.
yeah, she did. It was her joke.
But all right, man. Well, let's cut it off. We all got stuff to do. But thanks, Dave. We're gonna get that playlist posted up. I'll get you a link to it.
All right, dude. I'll send it
Later,
to you.
bro.
All right, take care, you guys. We'll talk to you.
See you, Dave.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.